Mercedes had a roller coaster ride at last weekend's Hungarian Grand Prix. From having one of the worst cars on the Friday, being able to put the car on pole during qualifying, and not being competitive on the race day, that is a huge disappointment. Lewis Hamilton is yet to feel comfortable with his W14. Though he was able to nudge pole from Verstappen, creating a new record for most poles at one circuit, he was not able to capitalize on the pole by converting that into a podium finish. His car was far from optimal as he had to settle down to a fourth place finish. So what exactly went wrong for Hamilton? And is this an addition to the already existing problems of the Mercedes W14? If there is one thing that Hamilton felt throughout the entire Hungarian Grand Prix weekend, it was utter disappointment. His poor getaway from the line meant that he lost 3 positions to his rivals on the opening lap itself. That hurts more when looking back at the promising pace the W14 exhibited on Saturday's qualifying. After 33 races, Hamilton was able to grab pole once again and start the race on the front row. He apparently had one of the best chances to grab a race win since his last win at the 2021 Qatar Grand Prix and be a race winner not named Verstappen or Perez. But a poor getaway from Hamilton and a good getaway from Verstappen meant that the Dutchman took the race lead outright from turn 1 itself. That move continued to the 2-time world champion securing yet another race win, the 12th consecutive race victory for the Austrian team, setting a new record. That is not exactly why the 7-time world champion might be disappointed looking back. It is the lack of pace from his W14 and the fact that he was not able to secure a podium finish while starting from pole, which will be the fact for his disappointment. Red Bull's Sergio Perez started the Grand Prix 9th on the grid, but made a good recovery drive to finish on the last step of the podium. That drive proved that Perez is here to stay and has no ideas of being replaced by anyone else. But let's get back to Mercedes and Hamilton. He lost out to both the Red Bulls and to the McLaren of Lando Norris, as he had to settle for a P4 finish, just seconds behind podium finisher Sergio Perez. So, where is the problem with the Mercedes car now? This version of the W14 was supposed to be the worst car that Hamilton was going to drive, according to himself. While on qualifying, he was able to nudge pole by just setting personal best sectors. Pole in fact was not a thing in his mind. So from bad to good, going to worse on Sunday, Hamilton is not happy with how the W14 is performing, as it is becoming more of a challenge to hustle around racetracks. The reason for that might lie around how the car is set up, how the Silver Arrows focus more on qualifying, rather than having a better race car like Red Bull did. That argument can be debunked, considering the mammoth of a recovery George Russell made from P18. But the fact is, George had to deal with rivals who were not even a close match to the machinery he had, while the 7-time world champion had to fight with cars that had much better race pace than what he was able to extract from his W14. The 7-time world champion did the best job he could have done with the tools he was provided with, although a poor start from the line did cost him 3 grid positions. The race did not end there for Lewis, as on one stage, he was running at P5, but he was able to show impressive pace towards the latter stages of the Grand Prix, which allowed him to overtake the McLaren of Oscar Piastri, who actually was way faster than Hamilton during the first stint on the medium tires. That proves the inconsistency of the W14 is back. Lewis Hamilton had to contend with the inconsistency issues up front, while George Russell had to contend to come front from the back of the grid after a horrific qualifying session. Even prior to the race, the 7-time world champion knew well that the Red Bulls were on a league of their own, and that the race-winning opportunity was close to a 0. Yet, the Brit stayed positive when he was asked about possibilities of a potential race win at Budapest, as he went on to add, "Anything's possible, but I don't think we have a plan of that sort of leap in place at the moment." Hamilton continued his comments regarding the W14, as his frustration does make sense, from being the happiest driver on the grid down to being disappointed with the car's performance. When he was asked where the problem within his car was, the former world champion did not mix and mash up, as he went on to add, "The initial getaway wasn't the worst I've ever had. It wasn't as good as Max's start, I had wheel spin. Then Max was on the inside, he ran me wide and I got done by the 2 McLarens. Like 2015 when I fell back from first. Then I didn't have the pace to keep up with the guys. The balance of the car was awful on the first stint, a lot of understeer. Bit by bit, the car started to become more drivable and the last stint was much better. If we had the pace we had at the end, we'd have been much better." Still taking the positives from yesterday, great for everyone. It was spectacular. We have a lot of work to do. We are a long way off beating Red Bull in a race, and now we're behind the McLarens. We need to remind you that the 2 important heads at the Mercedes racing team, Toto Wolff and Lewis Hamilton, went on 2 different directions on how the 2023 car should be developed. While Hamilton does not want his team to stop now, even though the gap to the Milton Keynes outfit is damn huge. From what we can see from the last 3 races, Mercedes are not even the second fastest team. That status belongs to McLaren now, one of their customer teams. Toto Wolff was not so sure about the chances for a Hamilton win at Budapest, after grabbing that surprise pole after 33 dry races to add to his record-breaking poles of 104. The Austrian did mention that while the W14 was competitive on Lewis's hands during qualifying, the Mercedes car still remains unpredictable, and declared that Hamilton will have a very hard time controlling the beast on track. Wolff knows much more details about the unpredictability of the W14, the big factor that made Hamilton to make an apology for losing the lead to Verstappen on turn 1 and losing 2 further places to the 2 McLarens. This is something which has been bugging the Silver Arrows since the inception of these new ground effect technical regulations, and Hamilton has publicly been speaking about the direction of the car which the team should pursue. It looks like the 38-year-old Brit is trying to be the alpha male at Mercedes, in the process of building yet another competitive machinery back at Brackley. When talking about the W14, Wolff went on to say, "Clearly we have a package today that was competitive and Lewis just drove an amazing lap and put it on pole. I think that's something we can be really proud of. The biggest weakness we have in the car is not a lack of downforce, it is that the car is unpredictable. The drivers never have the confidence to really push it hard in qualifying, and I think the car they had today was something that gave confidence and allowed them to push without thinking that it could step out on the entrance or exit of the corner." All of these statements finally only points out to one fact, which is that Hamilton is not happy with how his car is currently performing. We even heard him saying that he is like a broken tape, repeating the same thing again and again regarding the car's development direction. Hamilton is always delighted to work on the car's weaknesses to transform that Mercedes into a race-winning machine. But the decline that we can see in Wolff's passion, by his own statements, does not bode well for the Silver Arrows. This shows how much differently Hamilton wants his team to approach this year's and next year's car development. Before diving into the creation of rumor mills, we can clearly see that there is a serious clash between Mercedes and Hamilton, which only will continue till the car is up to the championship winning mark. I think this will continue throughout the summer break as well, until something promising can be seen from the Silver Arrows. Hamilton still hasn't signed a contract with Mercedes, which also does not bode well for the Brackley-based squad. When asked about the car's development, the former world champion went on to say, "We've got to utilize the time we have on track to develop the car that we have and fix those problems. I'm confident we'll get there. It's just a question of how long that will take. The thing we can't see is the airflow throughout the car. That is just limited when you look in the wind tunnel because there's only a certain amount you can move the car. There's simulations with the new rules that we have and all the new tools we have had to create and understand the flow structures underneath the car. All those vortices would blow your mind if you saw what's happening underneath the car, which is a lot different to the previous generations of cars. Working through that just takes time. This can easily be depicted as bad news for Hamilton and his future with Mercedes. That is not because of not putting ink on the paper. It is because of the car not performing at his level of expectations. The statements made from Wolff's side just makes matters worse, as any hopes for a good Mercedes performance are becoming dark and dark after every race weekend. The Hungarian Grand Prix was the race in which the Silver Arrows were supposed to examine the full potential of the new front wing, which was introduced back at Silverstone. While the qualifying pace was encouraging, the race pace will again lead to a lot of head scratching back at Brackley. Mercedes is not even close to catching Red Bull, while stealing that pole position will be a definite statement and achievement. Consolidating its position as the second fastest car on the grid might be the prudent cause of action for the Silver Arrows. While pole might be a good confidence booster, losing 3 positions on the opening lap will be a bigger confidence breaker, and that's what Hamilton went through at Hungary. That becomes an even bigger problem when looking at how good of a recovery race his teammate had. That also breaks into the question, are Mercedes really safe at P2 on the constructors? McLaren scored 28 points at Budapest and 30 points at Silverstone. They are regular podium fighters now, which poses the threat on the constructors' tally. While that is one part of the story, the other part, will Mercedes ever get another chance at a shot of a pole and a race win this season? We head right into the Belgian Grand Prix this weekend, and who knows what's in store for the Silver Arrows there. With Hamilton not so happy with the W14, what sort of challenges would he have to endure at Spa? How far do you think he will be able to push the Mercedes beast around that fast-flowing circuit? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section down below. We'd love to discuss it with you. And on your way down, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to get notified of our future uploads to keep yourselves up to date about the 2023 Formula 1 season.